Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing yet another special of the anime, being another episode of Pokemon Chronicles, A Date with Delcatty. This episode is another one that focuses on Misty. And it begins with Misty throwing in a whole bunch of new food that Professor Oak had made for all her water Pokemon, as she told her Horsey and Starmie to come over and eat it, since they were the two Pokemon she cared most about, obviously, due to them being hers. All of the water Pokemon come after Starmie and Horsey, and they all enjoy the food, making Misty glad, as she tells them that Professor Oak would be glad to hear they enjoyed it as well, since he had made the food just for them after all. Psyduck and Togepi happened to be out while Misty was feeding the rest of the Watermons, and Psyduck spotted the bucket where Misty had gotten the food that she threw in, and he eagerly went up to the bucket and dove headfirst into the bucket, chowing the fuck down as Togepi simply danced beside it, not seeing any problem with this. It was just too focused on its dancing. Misty did see a problem with this, though, when she noticed Psyduck eating due to how much noise it was making, as she pulled Psyduck out of the bucket and scolded it, stating that Psyduck had already eaten its fair share of food earlier. Psyduck was scarred from Misty's yelling momentarily, so it decided to oblige and not dig its head back into the bucket. Just then, Misty was startled as the door to the gym's aquarium room where she was opened, and Daisy appeared, leading Misty to ask Daisy what she was doing home, leading Daisy to confirm that her and the rest of Misty's sisters were finally back from their worldwide trip. Misty then reveals that apparently she knew this already, and knew that her sisters had been back for 3 weeks by this point, but they had just decided to still leave the gym in her care, as they didn't come back to the gym after the first time. We just didn't get to see this on screen. Daisy admitted this was true, though stated that the only reason why her and her sisters hardly ever returned to the gym was because even after they had returned from their trip, they were still busy as fuck. Misty then noticed that Daisy was holding 2 bags in her arms, and asked if the 2 bags were related to her being busy, leading Daisy to reveal that she had went on a shopping spree. So Misty sighed, thinking that her sisters clearly weren't that fucking busy, as she asked where Violet and Lily were, her other 2 sisters, thinking that they were merely just shopping as well. But Daisy explained that Violet was at dance practice, particularly a form of ballet, while Lily was at a gym class learning how to work out and shape her body, stating that this dancing and body shaping was necessary since the 3 sisters were apparently preparing for a new modeling assignment they were given by an agent of theirs, and added that the 3 sisters would be gone until late next week. Daisy had just come by to drop off some shit that she had just bought. Misty was frustrated at her sisters all going on this modeling assignment because she wanted some help running the gym. Daisy claimed that she and her sisters couldn't wait to come back as the sensational sisters of the Cerulean gym, and explained that after the modeling assignment, they would not only help out Misty with the gym, they would actually take back over entirely. However, Misty, hearing that her sisters were putting way more focus on their modeling than actually being gym leaders, declared that she was actually doing a better job at handling the gym than them, all by herself, and didn't need their help. Daisy admitted that she knew Misty was likely doing fine. That was the whole reason why they had assigned her the job of looking after the gym, but stated that whether Misty liked it or not, they would eventually return to the gym. But Daisy was then interrupted when Misty realized that Psyduck had clearly not been scared enough by her and had gotten into the bucket of Pokemon food again. So Misty ran up to it and pulled it out, seeing that Psyduck was now gasping for air, having almost died, because it was so enveloped in eating that it almost choked and it didn't come up for air, making Misty annoyed as she wondered how she was going to actually get Psyduck to stop being a fucking dumbass for once. And we then hear Misty yell at Psyduck in annoyance, and the yelling echoed throughout the Cerulean gym, and even outside. Meanwhile, at a hamburger fast food restaurant, an employee was waiting on some customers, and they eventually fucking showed up after a long time, annoying the worker as it took them way too long, but she still told them to come again, because that was part of her fucking job description. And then the next people in line approached. These people were dressed in black, entirely black. The worker asked the 2 people dressed in black what they wanted, and the 2 people claimed that they wanted the Hyper Happy Burger Combo with fries as a side. And they whispered that the meal, also known as the Rocket Special, apparently. The worker smiled and gave them only fries, claiming that there was a special prize in the fries, stating that the rest was coming right away, and instructed them to sit down at a table. The 2 people dressed in black obliged, and sat down at the table as they dumped the fries onto it, and a small computer chip fell out from the fries. The 2 people dressed in black then took off their face cloaks that they had on, that kind of just like were masks that shielded their faces a little bit, and it was revealed that these 2 people were Butch and Cassidy, and the worker at the burger place was actually a Team Rocket member undercover, and there actually wasn't a prize in the fries. It was instead just a part of the Rocket Special, which was a code word between Team Rocket members, so they knew that they were talking with other Team Rocket members. Anyways, the worker had put the computer chip purposely inside the fries, as the computer chip was meant exclusively for Butch and Cassidy. Anyways, after checking that no one was around the table that they sat at, Butch and Cassidy activated the computer chip, and Dr. Namba's voice came out of it, as well as a projection of Delcatty. And Dr. Namba explains on the recording that a local boy in Cerulean City had a very rare Pokemon known as Delcatty that he had his eyes on. He then adds that, therefore, he wanted Butch and Cassidy to go and steal this rare Delcatty for him, and proceeded to give the boy from Cerulean City's exact location, and clarified that Delcatty must be captured as soon as possible. Butch and Cassidy were both immensely grateful to have been given a new job by Dr. Namba, And although Cassidy knew that Dr. Namba was just a voice recording, Butch somehow thought that he was currently live talking to them, and greeted him and thanked him for the job, leading Cassidy to tell him that it was just a recording and tell him to be fucking quiet since they didn't want to be found out by anyone. Namba then ends the recording by warning Butch and Cassidy that the chip was going to self-destruct to avoid it being tracked as soon as he was done talking. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened, as once Namba was done talking, the chip began to explode and steam erupted everywhere. Thankfully, the explosion wasn't loud, since the chip was so small. Butch and Cassidy then smiled at each other, excited to do this new job they were given. Meanwhile, we then see none other than Casey and her Meganium, who had just arrived at one of the Cerulean City's main attractions, the Cerulean Marine Stadium, which was a baseball stadium that was going to be hosting a game tonight between Casey's favorite baseball team, the Electabuzzes, versus the Starmies. Casey was determined to go into the stadium and watch the game in person to cheer on her absolute favorite team, the Electabuzzes, and stated that her Meganium should do this with her as well. But soon remembered that she didn't have a ticket because the tickets were sold out when she went to go buy some earlier, and became sad when she expressed this to Meganium. However, she soon got a little bit of hope as she realized that there was still some time before the game actually started, so she figured that they could go around the city and see if anyone had bought a ticket that they were willing to give up. And the first place that she noticed was the huge Cerulean City gym, and suggested to Meganium that they go there. So that's what she and Meganium did. Meanwhile, back at the Cerulean gym, Misty heard the doorbell ring on the main floor, so she ran up to the main floor and answered the door to find none other than Tracy, who was holding up a bag of Pokemon food and other supplies, explaining that he had arrived with all of the supplies and food that she had requested from Oak. Particularly some toys for the water Pokemon in the aquarium that Oak had researched to find out that water Pokemon would like, and some more of his signature Pokemon food for the water types at the gym. We also found out that Misty had told Tracy about her Starmie and Horsey's reaction to Oak's food, and Tracy stated that Oak was very pleased with Horsey and Starmie's positive reaction to his food. But as he was saying this, Casey then appeared at the door, which was still open, and she instantly recognized Misty upon seeing her, so she ran up to her and greeted her. Misty, of course, recognized Casey as well, so she actually met Casey halfway, as the two of them greeted each other and began to talk. Misty was curious as to why Casey was in Cerulean City, though, and asked her what she was doing, leading Casey to explain that there was an Electabuzz team baseball game at the Cerulean Stadium, and she happened to be searching for tickets since they were sold out. Unfortunately, though, Misty revealed that she didn't have one, of course. Casey was disappointed by this, so she proceeded to hype herself up, as well as hype Team Electabuzz up to make herself feel better, as she stated that Team Electabuzz were getting tougher day by day, just like she was, and began to chant the Electabuzz theme song that she always did. Although Misty, as usual, got tired of this, so after a few verses, Misty interrupted her, taking the opportunity to introduce her to Tracy. Tracy waved, introducing himself as well, as Casey then elbowed Misty in the side, whispering to her if Casey was Misty's new boyfriend. Misty angrily pushed Casey back, stating that he was just Oak's assistant and a friend, and asked why she had come to the conclusion that they were boyfriend and girlfriend just because they were hanging out, and asked why everyone seemed to come to the conclusion that her and Tracy dated, referencing all the previous times that had happened. Casey obviously had no clue about any of these previous times, but simply just laughed at Misty's anger and greeted Tracy, stating it was good to meet him. Misty then decided to give Casey a tour around the gym, since she had never been there before, and the first place they went to was the main battlefield area, leaving Casey absolutely astounded at how big and beautiful the swimming pool was. It was then that Daisy finally arrived, as she hadn't left the gym yet, because if you remember, she was still there when Misty went to answer the doorbell. Anyways, upon hearing Casey state how beautiful the pool was, Daisy took it as a compliment to herself, as she was usually the one who looked after the pool, totally disregarding how Misty had been taking care of it since she was gone. Misty then introduces Daisy to Casey, and vice versa. But Daisy reminded Misty that she'd never met Tracy either, so Misty introduced Tracy as well. After the introductions were done, a Pelipper then flew in through the gym window that happened to be open, making everyone wonder what the fuck a random-ass Pelipper was doing in the gym, when suddenly it flew down and dropped a letter out of its mouth, which Tracy caught, and he handed it to Misty, since he saw that the envelope that had the letter in it was addressed to Misty. Misty immediately took the envelope and opened it up, taking the letter out, as the Pelipper flew away, out of the window, having done its job. When Misty began reading the letter, she saw that it was from a boy named Giorgio, who was also a trainer, who instructed Misty to meet him at the Cerulean Lighthouse for a battle. Misty was very confused as to who this letter could be from, and continues to read the letter, as it ended with the trainer writing that there was more to the reason of why he wanted to battle Misty, but he couldn't disclose that. This didn't help Misty find out who this Giorgio guy actually was, though Daisy suggested that he may be a secret admirer, but Casey suggested that it could be someone who lost to Misty once during a gym battle and wanted revenge. Regardless of what the reason was, Tracy, Daisy, and Casey all suggested that Misty should go and find out what the trainer wanted with her. At first, Misty was kind of hesitant on going, as she claimed that she had a lot of chores to do, such as cleaning the pool. However, Casey and Daisy really wanted Misty to go and meet this trainer, so they convinced Tracy to do Misty's chores for her, because, Tracy was just a cuck like that, a nice guy. Misty was kind of against this, though, as he wanted Tracy to come with her, as she wanted some accompaniment, in case the trainer was sketchy. But Daisy reminded Misty that Tracy had promised to clean the pool now and do other chores, so he couldn't back out. Unless, of course, Misty wanted to do them, but that would mean that she wouldn't get to go after the trainer. Misty apologizes to Tracy for making him clean the pool, and telling him not to mind her sister too much, as she had no manners and could be a real bitch to basically anybody. Although, added that maybe if Tracy cared about cleaning the pool enough, then maybe he could get on her sister's good side. Casey then tells Misty that she could go with her if she wanted some companionship, and Misty agreed. So Misty and Casey went off as Tracy began cleaning the pool, and Daisy left up onto the main level of the gym to relax. As Tracy was cleaning the pool, he was wondering if he really should stop being a fucking simp and a nice guy and just stop cleaning the pool. Basically, he thought that he was constantly being nice and doing all these chores, and he wasn't getting anything in return. Meanwhile, in an alleyway somewhere in Cerulean City, Butch and Cassidy were hiding there in their black disguises still. And they were both hard at work trying to find the Delcatty that Dr. Namba was wanting. Butch had apparently found out that the trainer who owned the Delcatty had purchased tickets to the upcoming Electabuzz vs. Starmie game that night, and Cassidy then declared that her and Butch should get the fuck on the move to try and find this trainer then, when they made it to the stadium or some shit. So then, Butch and Cassidy took off their disguises and went off, hoping to incite fear in their Team Rocket outfits if they came across the trainer. Meanwhile, back with Misty and Casey, they had now arrived at the Cerulean Lighthouse, and Casey teased that her and Misty were eagerly awaiting who she called Prince Charming to show up. Misty felt frightened and jumpy, thinking that there could have been a harmful motive to the letter, although Casey comforted her, stating that she also believed that there could potentially be a harmful motive to the letter, but it's because of this that she was on alert, and declared that she would do anything in her power to help out Misty, especially with her Meganium. Proudly declaring that with her and Meganium's strength, nothing bad would happen to Misty. Just then, a large, bulky sailor walked by, and Casey came to the conclusion that that must have been the man who sent the letter, and she suspected that he potentially had bad intentions, since he looked pretty rude and tough. Before Casey could do anything to this bulky sailor, though, he merely just walks past, revealing that he didn't even fucking know who Misty was, as Casey comments that her assumption was wrong, and it was just a false alarm. The guy actually hadn't written the letter. Misty got a bit angry at Casey, warning her not to jump to conclusions anymore, as that could lead to disastrous consequences. Just then, though, a shy-looking boy came up from the left of Casey and Misty, and he appeared scared and nervous as he stuttered out a hello, greeting Misty. The boy then tried to introduce himself, but Casey jumped forward, right in his face, cutting him off, as she asked him a barrage of questions, believing that he was the one who wrote the letter and could have had bad intentions with Misty, as she questioned him specifically on what his intentions were with Misty, or if he came here for revenge on Misty for losing a battle. Though Misty quickly shuts this theory down, confirming to Casey that she had never seen this boy in her life before. However, Casey still accused the boy of wanting to cause harm, and the nervous boy tried his best to explain that he didn't want to cause any harm, but since he was so socially anxious, he wasn't able to get his point across properly, so Casey still had her doubts. However, Misty pulled Casey back to talk to her, stating that she was sure that someone who was this nervous likely didn't have bad intentions. Misty then went up to the boy and tried to apologize for Casey's forcefulness and asked nicely what he actually really wanted. Although Casey soon jumped in again, yelling at the boy, just spit it out already and quit dilly-dallying. The boy tries to say that he was trying, but he just kept getting interrupted. But this just pisses Casey off, as she accuses the boy of trying to deflect, actually saying what he wanted, and demands him yet again to say what he wanted. The boy was immensely nervous from all of Casey's yelling, but regardless, he did barely manage to stutter out something, which was an introduction to himself, introducing himself as Giorgio, confirming that he did write the letter, and also confirmed that he had a crush, as he started blushing. Misty and Casey were shocked as fuck by this, not understanding how that related to Misty, or Giorgio's letter to Misty, whatsoever, although Giorgio soon clarified after a few seconds nervously that his crush was on Misty, and he then nervously asked Misty out on a date, leaving Misty to freak out in complete shock. Casey was obviously shocked as well, and both her and Misty were so shocked that they were speechless. Aside from the ability to scream, which Misty definitely did, she had to get out her shock somehow, and screaming was the only way she could do this. Casey eventually snapped out of her shock enough to pull the letter away from Misty and question Giorgio if he really wrote the letter. Giorgio confirms this, stating that he was too shy to try and find Misty in person, stating that he preferred to articulate his thoughts on paper first and then say them to people after. Casey thought that it was cute that Giorgio had put in all this effort to write a letter for Misty, admitting that he didn't seem dangerous anymore, stating her belief that anyone who wrote love letters couldn't possibly be dangerous. Seeing as Misty hadn't answered yet, Giorgio nervously restated his question, asking if Misty would go on a date with him. Unfortunately for Giorgio, though, he was turned down by Misty, who thanked him for his interest in her, admitting she was flattered, but also just stating that she didn't really want a relationship right now. Giorgio was determined not to give up, though, as he tried to impress Misty by telling her that Misty was the most beautiful girl that he had ever seen, which made Misty blush, leading Casey to elbow Misty and whisper in her ear like she had done before, laughing as she teased Misty that she clearly had a crush now, thanks to her immense blushing, but Misty simply denied this, angrily yelling at Casey. Psyduck heard Misty's yelling and forcibly popped out of its Pokeball, hearing Misty's yelling and deciding to try and confront it head-on, trying to basically become desensitized to Misty's yelling by laughing at it from now on, although when Misty sees Psyduck smiling and laughing out of frustration, this just ends up making Misty even more mad as she recalls Psyduck to its Pokeball. Misty didn't want anyone to think that she did have a crush on Giorgio because she was blushing. So she knew that she had to get away from Giorgio immediately to just fucking end this whole situation. So she told Giorgio she was leaving, although Giorgio stopped her in her tracks, telling her that he had luxury seats for the Electabuzz and Starmie game tonight. Particularly, he had 2 tickets. He then pulls out the 2 tickets and states that he would like to take Misty out on a date to the Electabuzz and Starmie game, and added that he also had 2 more tickets for future Electabuzz games stashed away at his house, that he would be glad to share with Misty if they ended up going on another date. Before Misty could even respond, Casey jumped up to Giorgio and stated how amazed she was at the fact that he had special tickets, knowing that these special tickets allowed a person to eat and watch the baseball game at the same time. Staring at Giorgio starry-eyed, loving him now, as she begged him to take her to the Electabuzz vs. Starmie game, stating that she loved the Electabuzz team more than anything. Giorgio was caught off guard by Casey's sudden outburst, and since he was so shy, he wasn't used to an outgoing person like this. Although Casey just continued to ask, as she started to daydream of cheering for the Team Electabuzz from a great seat that Giorgio had bought with his ticket. Almost as luxurious as a fucking suite. Maybe there was a fucking bed on the seat, room service. Anyways, Giorgio just ignored Casey and challenged Misty to a battle, stating that if he would lose, he would go away, and Misty would never have to see him again. But if he won, then Misty would have to go with him to the Electabuzz vs. Starmie game. Casey then butt in, though, and suggested that if Giorgio ended up losing to Misty, then he should take Casey out to the game instead. But Giorgio simply rebutted that he didn't like Casey at all. He only liked Misty, so he had no reason to take Casey out, and stated that the battle would be on his rules. So if he didn't want to take Casey out, then he didn't have to. Casey then tried to suggest that her and Misty should battle for the opportunity to battle Giorgio, stating that once Giorgio saw how strong Casey was and how she was likely able to beat Misty, then Giorgio would become infatuated with her instead of Misty, and would therefore take her out to the Electabuzz vs. Starmie game, stating that she would win because she was the real Team Electabuzz fan, and she could channel the spirit of Team Electabuzz. However, Giorgio told Casey not to go through with this battle, stating that even if Casey did beat Misty, it wouldn't get rid of his crush towards her, making Casey sad. Anyways, even though Misty didn't really want to battle Giorgio, she declared that she would, stating that she had to since a gym leader had to accept any challenge they got. That was part of the rules, although she reminded him that since she was a gym leader, she would not be an easy person to take down. Giorgio admitted that this was true, and stated that that was also one of the reasons why he liked Misty. He didn't just find her attractive, but he found her very strong. So, Casey then decided to be the referee of the battle, so she could at least be involved in some way, as she explained the basic rules that the battle was going to be a one-on-one battle. And Togepi rested on Meganium, watching the battle, as it began with Misty sending out her Corsola, and Giorgio sending out Delcatty, as the Delcatty purred and licked its arm. Delcatty then goes in for a tackle on Corsola, but before Delcatty could reach Corsola, a claw reached from above on the lighthouse and grabbed Delcatty and pulled it up. Misty, Casey, and Giorgio then look up to where Delcatty was pulled, and saw that Delcatty was now put inside a round cage resembling an egg, and spotted none other than Butch and Cassidy atop the lighthouse, as they said their motto, stating their goal to capture the Delcatty. Yeah, that's right, this Delcatty was the one that they were looking for. Of course, Misty recognized Butch and Cassidy, and Giorgio demanded them to give Delcatty back, but Butch and Cassidy refused, as they just grabbed Delcatty's cage and put it inside a bag, and then began running away. Though after getting a running start, they then revealed that they had hang gliders attached to their backs they just had to open up, and they did, allowing them to fly off, escaping with Delcatty. Giorgio was, of course, desperate to get his Delcatty back, and thankfully, he had a way to go after Butch and Cassidy in the air. His Pelipper. Yeah, that's right. The Pelipper that had delivered the letter, that one was obviously his. So, he sent it out, and it went flying after Butch and Cassidy. And after Pelipper had reached Butch and Cassidy, it quickly started using Peck on their hang gliders, causing Butch and Cassidy to bitch and moan in annoyance when they suddenly crashed into the beach below, because their gliders were fucked. With Butch and Cassidy down, Misty, Casey, and Giorgio took the opportunity to run to the beach where they had crashed, and Giorgio didn't back down, as he told Pelipper to use a water gun on Butch and Cassidy, blowing them back and injuring them, leaving Butch and Cassidy struggling to get back up. Giorgio taunts Butch and Cassidy, warning that they were at a disadvantage, and demands them, once again, to hand over his Delcatty, but Butch and Cassidy refused to give up without a fight, and they were quickly able to recover, removing themselves from their destroyed hang gliders. And Cassidy sends out her Sableye, and Butch is Mightyena, in an attempt to stop Misty, Giorgio, or Casey from interfering. Although Casey and Misty were prepared to not back down either, as Casey sent forward her already out Meganium, and Misty sent forward her already out Corsola. The battle between Corsola and Meganium and Mightyena and Sableye then began, as Sableye tried to use Fury Swipes on Corsola, but Corsola dodged and used Spike Cannon. It almost missed, but it was actually able to hit. As for Meganium, it was dealing with Mightyena, as it dodged a tackle attack from Mightyena and used a Razor Leaf on it. Sableye then went in to use a Shadow Ball on Corsola, although Corsola was able to dodge this as well and tackle Sableye. Mightyena then uses Iron Tail on Meganium, but it didn't do much damage, leading Meganium to go for a Body Slam immediately after being hit. With both Mightyena and Sableye severely injured by this point, Meganium was able to go for a Solar Beam that hit Sableye and Mightyena into Butch and Cassidy, sending all of them blasting off, and causing a huge-ass explosion on the beach. Giorgio was very happy to see Butch and Cassidy gone, and he was even more happy when he saw that Butch and Cassidy had dropped Delcatty's cage it was in, so he was able to press a button on the cage to unleash it, and then he hugged it, stating how happy he was to have Delcatty back, as he then thanked Misty and Casey for their help, and reminded Misty that they had some battling to do. So, he, Misty, and Casey all return to the lighthouse where they were battling before, and the battle officially resumes. Corsola versus Delcatty. Delcatty started off by hitting Corsola with a double edge, but Corsola retaliated by hitting Delcatty with a tackle. So basically, these attacks ended up just doing nothing, as both Pokemon took roughly the same amount of damage. So Delcatty then went in for an Iron Tail, hitting Corsola, and then immediately followed up with a double edge to do even more damage, leaving Casey impressed with how well Delcatty was trained. Meanwhile, we then cut back to Tracy at the Cerulean Gym as he continued to clean the pool and the poolside with a mop, when suddenly Daisy approached him and stated that she actually needed his help with something other than cleaning. So Tracy accepted and followed Daisy under the gym, which was where all the gym's pipes were located. So Daisy clarified that she needed Tracy's help with some pipes that she couldn't see because it was so dark underneath the gym. So Tracy thankfully had a flashlight with him due to always knowing to be prepared, as taught by Professor Oak. And after shining the flashlight on the pipes, he noticed that one was leaking. And Daisy realized that this pipe was part of the aquarium's main water supply, so it had to be fixed right away. Otherwise, all the water Pokemon in there would not have any water. So Tracy promises he would fix the pipe lickety-split, stating that it would be no problem for him, as he was used to helping Oak with leaky pipes and other shit, leading Daisy to thank Tracy for how kind he was. Yay! It appeared as though Tracy was getting along with one of Misty's sisters after all. Wow. Anyways, back during Misty and Giorgio's battle, Corsola then used Spike Cannon, but Delcatty dodged and used Double Team. Corsola and Misty began to get worried upon seeing all the Double Team copies, knowing that it'd be very hard for Corsola to hit the real one, although Misty came up with an idea, having Corsola use Spike Cannon, since it fired out multiple little shots that could hopefully hit more than just one Delcatty, and while this happened, only the fake Delcatty were hit. The real one was unharmed, allowing it to sneak up on Corsola and use a very strong Ice Beam, causing an explosion, making Misty worried that something bad could have happened to Corsola. And Misty got even more worried when the dust from the explosion settled and Corsola looked like it was unable to battle. Giorgio was immensely happy, claiming that the battle was over, so Misty had to go on a date with him now, but Misty rebutted that she was sure that the battle wasn't over at all, as she knew that she had a secret weapon up her sleeve that she could use to heal Corsola, as she ordered Corsola to use Recover, which helped it stand back up, and it jumped happily, ready to battle yet again. Giorgio was unaware that Corsola had a Recover attack, and this made him extremely worried, as Corsola then struck Delcatty with a Spike Cannon and followed up with a Tackle, and these two attacks combined were enough to knock Delcatty out, resulting in Misty taking the win, which Casey officially declares, stating that Misty was the official winner. And Giorgio then goes up to his Delcatty and recalls it, telling it put up a great fight, and shouldn't feel bad about being beaten by such a talented gym leader such as Misty, leading Misty to thank Giorgio for the compliment. Then, Giorgio, respecting Misty, decided to keep his promise and stated that since he lost, he wouldn't ask Misty on a date. Misty respected Giorgio for both his strength and staying true to his promise, and therefore told him that if he ever wanted to have another battle with her, she would definitely allow it, loving to battle against strong trainers like Giorgio. Giorgio was about to leave, but then Casey came up to him and nudged him to get his attention, and reminded him of her offer to battle Giorgio, who she called Loverboy, so to see if she could be the one to be taken out by Giorgio to go to the baseball game. Giorgio declined, though, not having any interest in going out with Casey still, so Casey then suggested that Giorgio merely sell her a ticket so that she could at least go by herself. Giorgio stated that he would much rather battle as opposed to sell the ticket. He had no problem battling Casey, as he wanted to see the strength of her Meganium. He just didn't want to have to promise to go on a date with her when he didn't want to. So Casey agreed to this, not caring whatsoever about going on a date with Giorgio. She just wanted a ticket to the baseball game. So Misty decided to be the referee of this battle, as she announced the rules, stating that it would be a one-on-one battle, and if Casey won, then she would get to take one of the tickets. And then both trainers sent out their Pokemon, with Casey sending out none other than her Elekid, who she called her pitch hitter in baseball, because, she used baseball terms with her Pokemon. Much to Misty's surprise, Giorgio then sent out his Delcatty to battle yet again, and Misty warned Giorgio that Delcatty would probably be weakened after its battle with her Corsola, but Giorgio responded that he knew his Delcatty could take this battle. And Giorgio then wished his Delcatty good luck, as Misty officially declared it was time for the battle to begin, with Togepi and Meganium watching, and Elekid started off by going for a Thunder Punch, but Delcatty dodged and hit Elekid with a double edge, sending Elekid flying back, although Elekid quickly got back up and used Thunderbolt, using its arms to swing them and charge them up with electricity, and then send that electricity towards Delcatty, leading Delcatty to use a double team to try and dodge the attack by confusing Elekid. Sure enough, this works, as Elekid's Thunderbolt hits all of the Double Team clones, but by the time all the Double Team clones were done, so was Elekid's Thunderbolt. It had run out of charged up electricity, so this allowed Delcatty to hit the defenseless Elekid with an Iron Tail. Although Elekid flew back, it managed to land on its feet, and looked ready for more, determined to battle, but just then, Elekid collapsed, leading Misty to declare Giorgio the winner, as Casey called back her Elekid, falling to her knees in shame, as she started to mope in sadness that she would never get to see the Team Electabuzz play their baseball game. Disappointed by the loss, and sadly stating that the only way she could get the tickets would be to dream about it. Although, much to her surprise, Giorgio then comes up to her and gives her one of the tickets, even though she lost, leading Casey to become confused and question why Giorgio was doing this, leading Giorgio to state that he was impressed with Casey, saying that even though she lost, she put up a heck of a fight. And not only that, he was also impressed with her skills after saving his Delcatty. He then revealed that the only reason why he had actually declined going with Casey was because he was waiting to see if Misty would still want to change her mind and go with him, but he now respected the fact truly that Misty didn't want to go with him, and decided that he would actually be better off going with Casey anyways, since they both were super obsessed with the Electabuzz team, so they would get along really well. Casey jumped for joy at the fact that she had encountered someone who was as passionate about Team Electabuzz as her, and proceeded to dance happily. Casey then cheers for Misty as well, thanking her as she excitedly grabbed her hands and jumped up and down, telling Misty that there was no way she could have got the tickets or encountered Giorgio if she didn't come to Misty at the Cerulean Gym. Casey then made sure that Misty wasn't just playing hard to get and actually liked Giorgio, and was basically making sure that Misty wouldn't be mad that Casey was now going to date Giorgio, and Misty assured Casey that she was not attracted to Giorgio, as she laughed at the thought, and admitted that Giorgio and Casey definitely seemed like a better couple because of their mutual Team Electabuzz interest, and this led Casey to just continue to dance around happily, excited for her date with Giorgio at the stadium. Later that evening, it was now time for the Team Electabuzz vs. Team Starmie game, and therefore, it was time for Casey and Giorgio's date, as they split off from Misty, and the two of them, along with their Meganium and Delcatty, walked towards the stadium. Along the way, Casey asked Giorgio if they truly did have, like, awesome premium seats, and Giorgio confirmed that they did, leading Casey to then ask if these seats were so good that they didn't have to pay for dinner, and Giorgio confirmed this, stating that dinner was included in the ticket, making Casey very happy. Casey and Giorgio then talked about their mutual love for Team Electabuzz, as they both started chanting the Team Electabuzz theme song to wish Team Electabuzz luck in the upcoming game, as they then entered the stadium to watch it, with Meganium and Delcatty happy that their trainers were happy. Meanwhile, as for Misty, she had returned to the Cerulean Gym, as we see the outside, and it fades into the inside, where Misty was greeted by Tracy and Daisy, and Misty explained what had happened, specifically going into detail about how the person who wrote the letter was named Giorgio, and he wanted a date, leading Daisy to question Misty if she had accepted the date offer, reminding her of her belief that she should only accept dates if the guy was a good dresser and was very nice. Misty replied that the guy was very nice and a relatively good dresser, but she just thought that she was too busy at the gym to have time, not wanting to admit that she just didn't find the guy that attractive. Just then, Misty noticed that Tracy had a wrench in his hand and asked why this was, leading Tracy to explain about the leak and how he had done some repairs to the pipe that was leaking. Misty was happy that it was fixed, knowing the catastrophic damage that could happen to the water Pokemon if they didn't have any water to breathe in. And Daisy revealed that she was very grateful to Tracy as well, deciding to take him out for dinner as a reward for fixing it, although she whispered to Misty that Tracy's true reward was actually her letting him take her out to dinner. So basically, Tracy was still going to be the one to have to pay. Tracy's reward was just getting to be in Daisy's presence. Yeah, of course. Daisy then reminded Misty that since she was back, Misty didn't have to run the gym anymore, so she could go do whatever she wanted, leading Misty to sadly leave the gym, still wanting to be a gym leader, although Daisy soon realized that she may still need Misty's help, as Lily and Violet hadn't returned from the model assignment yet. So Misty was happy, as that meant that she could have a balance. She could be a good gym leader while also having more time for herself. Later, as night fell, Misty went to sit on the diving board at the pool with only her Togepi in her arms, as she debated what she should do with her life, now that she only had to be a gym leader half-time. As the moon reflects over the pool, Misty talked to Togepi, complaining how she didn't think her sisters took being gym leaders seriously enough, so she was glad at least that Daisy had let Misty remain a part-time gym leader, and she declared that even though being a gym leader could be tough, she liked being one, and she was gonna be the best gym leader that she could possibly be. Although she then turned her mind to what she should do now that she only had to be a gym leader half-time, so she considered going to Hoenn to find Ash and hopefully Brock to reunite with them, as it had been quite a while. So, the episode then ends with Misty looking out into the night sky and looking at the moon's reflection, as well as two migrating Wingull, ready to head off to Hoenn soon. Man, are we actually going to get a reunite episode between the original gang? Oh my god.